We're in Africa, we're in Durban. Let's just focus a bit on closer to you in Nairobi, closer to home, the Congo Basin. Give us an idea of the state of the rainforests in the Congo Basin at the moment. We know it's the Democratic Republic of Congo is a region that's been hit by war for a long time, but what are the state of the rainforests there?
I think relatively within the climate change debate, you would refer to the Congo Basin as a sort of high forest, but relatively low deforestation rates in the Congo Basin, but very significant degradation with respect to timber production in the Congo Basin. So in terms of the drivers, I think agriculture is largely the main driver of deforestation in these areas, and mostly smallholder agriculture. Not large industries beginning to come in with oil palm and things like that, but largely it's smallholders. And that's why we're there in Cameroon, because we're looking at shifting cultivation and the role that it plays in terms of deforestation and the potential that it has for stabilizing forest and reducing deforestation and emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Yeah.
And if I'm a farmer in Cameroon, you might turn up to my front door and say, listen, you shouldn't be chopping down these trees, you should be trying to save the world and trying to cut carbon emissions. But if I'm a farmer in Cameroon, all I want to do is feed my kids, I want to give them a bit more food, have a few more cows. Why is it my responsibility for the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, I think that's an important point, because farmers wouldn't simply understand the language of carbon. So the entry point has to be the agriculture and the benefits that they get from it. So we sort of give the message that climate smart agriculture should also be poverty smart as well, in terms of looking at the interest of the farmers themselves. So we sort of look at intensification of agriculture, looking at agroforestry as a way of intensifying agriculture, increasing their incomes, increasing their productivity, and so reducing dependence on the forest and forest degradation as well. Yeah.
Because this is a problem. We've seen it in Argentina, we've seen it in the Amazon Basin. When states tend to develop, people like to eat more meat, and people need grassland to grow their meat, and they chop the trees down. Is that a model that can be stopped in other areas of the world?
Yes, I think we have an interest in looking at these models and trying to make sure that in the Congo Basin, in Africa, in Asia, we don't particularly go down that route. And that's why we need to look at sustainable intensification pathways through agroforestry, through more sustainable agricultural practices, climate smart agriculture. These are things that we need to promote in these areas, because if we don't, then we go the pathway of intensification that is harmful to the forest and to the climate.
And remind us what climate smart agriculture is.
Well, climate smart agriculture is trying to adopt practices such as agroforestry, such as good soil conservation practices that improve productivity for the farmers at the same time, sequester carbon at the same time, and take care of the environmental services that land produces for us and for our benefit as a global good, sort of, if you like. Yeah.
And I suppose on a final sort of point, ironically, I suppose the Democratic Republic of Congo is not that developed, and the forests are better protected because it has been for so long an area of strife, and economically has not been able to progress too far. Is there a danger, however ironic this may be, that once that country does start developing economically, the rainforests may be under threat?
The threats of deforestation and forest degradation are really high in these areas, and they're growing, because, as I said from the beginning, initially we thought, it's mainly smallholder farmers historically, but at the moment you've got an encroaching and increasingly growing threat in the region, and that's from oil palm, large companies coming in to create these plantations all over the Congo Basin, because the rules are getting tighter in Southeast Asia and in Latin America. And then you get these people coming in to get land in Africa and in the Congo Basin in particular. So the threats are evolving. We can't see them as static. So The development needs will be there, but we need to be able to manage them in such a way that agriculture and all development needs coexist in the landscape, and we protect forest, we mitigate climate, and we help them to adapt to climate change as well at the same time.
And a final question: how can you compete with palm oil? If a farmer sees the money in front of him, how can you compete? What would you say to me if I had the big wad of cash in front of me, on my left or on my right, the chance to save my local rainforest?
I will tell you that if you practice agroforestry, increasing your trees in your farms, timber trees, fruit trees, they're all of very high value. So you could potentially get a lot out of agroforestry that can compete with oil palm. We've done studies on opportunity cost analysis for forest and other types of land uses, and agroforestry is quite competitive in terms of the carbon that it produces, the protection of biodiversity, and food as well, and incomes as well. So I'll tell you, do agroforestry at the forest margins, and you would help save the forest, protect biodiversity, and mitigate and adapt to climate change better.